There are days that I enjoy presiding, but there are days that I know that I have to come down and speak on a bill. And no, this is one of those days I had to come talk about this bill. I've been here now, I guess this is year 18 in this General Assembly, both in the minority and both in the majority. And I've been here with a few folks on this side and a few over there. Can anybody tell me a time in that time that the General Assembly has invested this amount of money in salaries, this amount of money in program spending, this amount of money in capital? It's never happened. The closest budget that saw this kind of significant investment adjusted for inflation probably was when Representative Richardson was here. It was maybe 1993, I would say. You got to go all the way back to that period of time to see that. We've talked about priorities around this state for years. My friends, this vote should be 120-0. This budget takes care of needs that have only been talked about for years. I want you to look at the SCIF funding. I want you to look at this SCIF funding. We have put a record amount into the University of North Carolina system. A record amount. At no time in the history of this state have we ever invested this much money in the historically black colleges and universities of this state. We have never done that. I have been and seen firsthand how the facilities, for example, at Elizabeth City State University have been allowed to just crumble over decades. The utter neglect. The fact that you have buildings on that campus that have been condemned, that you had a water system that wouldn't work, a sewer system that wouldn't work. Representative Hunter knows exactly what I'm talking about. We're seriously addressing and fixing that right now. That is transformative for Northeastern North Carolina. Transformative. Tell me a time that we've ever invested this much in our HBCUs. The answer is we have never invested this much money as we do today. The significant commitment that we put into our state's two Research One universities that are cutting edge and critical when it comes to research and development, when it comes to attracting good employers like Apple that just announced. Do you think that's an accident? They come because they recognize the investment that we do and that we make in our university system. Here we've put even more money in there. But you know, we haven't stopped there. Record amounts of money around this state for critical needs. There are a lot of counties, and I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand, but if I did, and I said, how many of you would feel like your community and your county have been forgotten and been overlooked for years and years? There'd be a lot of hands that would probably go up. This budget seeks to try to take a lot of those funds and invest it in a lot of those counties that are seeing challenges, whether it's infrastructure, water and sewer. We have communities in this state where literally the water and the sewer systems are failing, where companies want to be able to expand and they can't because of ailing systems there, and the local communities don't have money to fund those things. There's one of those, for example, down in Representative Raymond Smith's district. I mean, there are these kinds of real issues around the state. And so what we get into, and some of the fight that I was having to rule on up there in the chair had to do with amendments changing the way judges are elected. Look, this is not a time for political games. This is an opportunity to deal with a budget that spends $25.7 billion and roughly $9 billion in capital funds over infrastructure. Significant. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Dean Arp, because I was actually a doubter at first when he came to me, and he like, you like this, don't you? A doubter when he came to me with the SCIF. I said, man, I don't think this will necessarily work. I want it to. And the theory behind the SCIF is this. Instead of borrowing money to pay for capital projects, and you guys know I've been a supporter of the bond, instead of borrowing money, kind of think of the way that you do your own household expenses. If you can pay for things as you go along and avoid having to get into debt, avoid having to pay debt on a credit card or anything else, what happens? You have more money to actually go to pay those things, right? Well, I'm going to tell you, the SCIF plan is probably one of the greatest ideas that I've seen in the time I've been here, and it works. I really like and I won't hold the chart up because our rules don't call for that, but you've probably seen the chart that Representative Arp has that shows how we're getting into a point right now where we're going to have more money to spend on capital, to pay down debt, and to get that money out there throughout this state to fund those priorities. I mean, this is significant. It's almost sometimes seems too good to be true. But I'm going to tell you, the tight fiscal management, the responsible budgeting that's been done these last few years that folks on this side of the aisle and folks on that side of the aisle have voted for is a reason that we are where we are. That is no accident. If you think you can just throw numbers against the wall and see what happens, go ask the New York legislature how it works. Go ask Illinois. Go ask California. I've talked to a number of speakers around the state who would love to be in the position that we are in North Carolina with where we are fiscally. Now, I want to talk about, because several speakers have talked about education funding and have talked about speakers. And I just want to go immediately I just want to go directly to that right now. The raises that are in this budget are significant. They are major raises that are there. You're talking right now, most state employees are going to get an annual 2.5% salary increase per year. Community college faculty are going to get 3.5% both years. We know how our community colleges have been behind, and we're trying to restore that. Our universities that of course I fight for all the time, those faculty members are getting raises. Our non-certified, there was someone that talked about like the teaching assistants. The teachers' assistants get raises. They get the largest raises they've had in forever. They're getting significant money. We're bringing up those lowest paid employees to where they make $15 an hour. Everyone's getting a living wage. Do you really want to go on record voting against a living wage? When you vote no on this budget, that's what you do. Now, you know, and basically what I hear from those who say they want to vote against it is that it doesn't do enough. It doesn't do enough. I don't know when's enough then. I don't know when's enough. This is spending the most money we've ever spent. We're spending the money, but we're also being wise about it. We're not just spending every dime with nothing left. What would have happened? What would have happened had we done that a few years ago and we had the hurricanes hit? What would have happened down in Representative Brendan Jones' district if when there were floods happening and we needed to be able to hire sources and folks to come in and help, we said, sorry, we don't have the money. I mean, these are real issues, and this budget strikes that balance. So what do we do as far as taxpayers? What do we do to make sure that we keep this North Carolina dream moving forward? We lower taxes, but we lower taxes in a way that it benefits working families. We increase the standard deduction. What does that mean? Because people talk about that. What that is, that's the 0% tax bracket. That's those who make so little that we say, you know what? The federal government might tax you, but we're not going to tax your income. You're not going to pay a state income tax. That helps those who earn the least the most. This bill does that. We recognize and support our military retirees. We talk about North Carolina being the most military-friendly state in the nation. Guess what? This is signing your word of the document when you say military retirees income is not taxed. What about our historic buildings around the state that we've seen be transformed? One of the best programs that we've seen work in this state is the historic tax credit and the meal tax credit. I saw as recently, I guess last year, I was over in Alamance County, and I saw what's been done there with some amazing projects to restore buildings that had been vacant for years. I've seen some of the great work happening, for example, down in Greenville in Pitt County with restoring some buildings that have been vacant for decades, all because of the historic tax credit and the meal tax credit. Your vote on this budget says we support this, and we're going to make this permanent because we believe in continued growth. We've seen our small towns around the state suffer through a lot of things. This gives an opportunity to see that brought back. We've also are going to make sure we do right by those workers, and by those businesses who continue to pay folks even during the time of a pandemic when they couldn't be open, and secure the Paycheck Protection Program loans. We're going to align with the federal government on that. My friends, we have tax relief. We have appropriate spending. And I did want to mention a couple of other things. When it comes to the education side, this also restores, and nobody's mentioned this. One of the things that I heard in the last few years from those who would oppose it when it came to education pay had to do with master's pay. What does this bill do? It restores master pay. One of the requests we heard. And on the education side, I got to give a shout out to Representative Elmore. A lot of us are here from other jobs and doing different things. But when this guy comes from Wilkes County, he steps aside from his job as a classroom teacher. Not only is he committed to public service, he is committed in his private life and in his work life, educating our young people. I felt like nothing was more important when it came to crafting an education budget to have someone like a classroom teacher there, and I appreciate the work that he's done and the practical experience, because I don't know everything that goes on in a classroom. I don't understand that. I don't understand those conversations that may take place over the water cooler where teachers are talking with some of their colleagues, really laying out what their concerns are. Representative Elmore does. That's what's in this budget. That's what's in this budget. So my my request is this. And I mean, there's so many other things. What about a record investment in broadband? Record investment in broadband. Is there anybody in here that doesn't think expanding broadband is critical for the future of this state? Nobody raised their hand because we know it's critical. This puts a record amount into that. I already mentioned the record amount for water and sewer. We have more funding for transportation. If I would submit to you to vote against this budget, you got to look really hard to try to find something just to hold on to and say this isn't enough or that isn't enough. But the reality is, this is a great balance. What I want to see, my friends, is I want to see this House come out of here with a strong bipartisan vote on this bill. I can tell you that there are projects from all areas of this state represented by Republicans, areas of this state represented by Democrats. I know this. When I go home this weekend and I'm talking with the folks that I represent back home, I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, I'm glad I voted for a budget that did so many great things for my community, but overall for the state. I want you to be able to do that too, because every one of you recognize there are projects that are transformative for your region of the state as well as the state. There'll be plenty of time for politics. There'll be elections next year. And, as my good friend, the great orator and philosopher, Representative Sain says, you can't take politics out of politics. So I get it. I'm not naive enough to not recognize that. But can we today, through this budget, put that aside and recognize this is a good budget? This is a budget that everyone here should feel comfortable voting for, because where I was going a minute ago, I want to see a budget come out of this House with strong numbers, so that when I have to go negotiate with the Senate that sometimes views things a little differently than we do, that I'm in a position to advocate better. Now, if you think the Senate budget's better, fine, go ahead and vote no. Go ahead. I didn't see any takers on that one. But if you want to see the House be in a great position to negotiate, vote yes. Now, I want to address the other thing that was alluded to, because I've made this statement publicly, I've made it privately, I've said it otherwise. Representative Reeves and I were in a meeting with the governor and others, and he knows I said this. I committed at the appropriate time at the conference level that I would that I would make sure the governor's involved. Representative Reeves heard me say that, and we'll do that. I want to see us come out with a strong vote in this House today. Even if you got up and spoke against it and you thought, you know what, maybe I ought to go ahead and vote for it. I hope you will. I want to see as strong a vote as possible. That sends a message when we negotiate with the Senate, and then when we negotiate with them and we go back to the governor. Don't you think, if I've got a strong bipartisan support in this bill, that it also helps show the folks who are in the minority party to have more say-so in the process at the conference? You can either be a part of building things up and making it happen, or just throwing rocks. And I know every one of you here, And I know all of you have other things you could be doing than sitting here this afternoon. You're taking time away from your families. You're taking time away from your businesses, from your communities, to be here to serve. And I don't think for a minute that there are folks serving in this job that would rather play politics than do what they can do to try to serve their communities. My friends, your opportunity to do that is here. It is today. And it starts with showing your affirmative vote on this budget. So I make that request to everyone here, Republican, Democrat, urban, rural, suburban, mountains, coast, and whatever else. Please vote yes on this budget. You know it's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose does the lady from Forsyth, Representative Baker, arise?
To the